afternoon, everyone. Today's session is for S8 Computer Science Engineering students on the topic Natural Language Processing. Session by Ms. Sheena Kurian, Associate Professor, Department of Computer Science Engineering, KMEA Engineering College, Ernakulam. She has 18 years of teaching experience and a lot of publications to her name. We welcome you, ma'am. And some instruction for students. The students can use the QA panel for typing any queries regarding the topic. Okay, you can use the QA panel for typing queries. And at the end of the class, a feedback form will be displayed and you may kindly fill the feedback form and exit. Okay. Ma'am, on behalf of ASAP, we welcome you, ma'am. We can start the session.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning. We'll start with natural language processing. You know, it's a sixth module of artificial intelligence. Okay, these are the topics we'll be covering. What is natural language processing? Applications of natural language processing, reconstructing language, the building blocks of NLP, the different stages of language analysis, and the different stochastic tools for language analysis, and a little bit more on the applications at the end. So what is natural language processing? You know, it is a subfield of linguistics, information engineering, and artificial intelligence. Now, by artificial intelligence, we know we are trying to make machine think and act rationally like human beings. So in that process, NLP has a big role. NLP is actually concerned with the interactions between computers and human natural languages. In particular, we are trying to program computers how to process and analyze natural language data. Now, what do you mean by natural language? It is the language which we are using in day-to-day life for communication, like Malayalam, English, etc. And the programming languages which we are using, like C, C++, Python, etc., are called as formal languages. Usually, we make a computer do something like programming in those languages. We know that if there is any syntax mistake, the computer is not going to accept it. But that is not the case with natural language. Even if a person is talking with some grammatically incorrect sentence, the other person will be able to know or to understand what is happening or what is trying to communicate. So in that
Excuse me, ma'am, audio ചെറുതായിട്ടൊരു ഇഷ്യൂ വരുന്നുണ്ട്. നമുക്ക് മൈക്ക് ഒന്ന് മൈക്കിലൊന്ന് ഇപ്പൊ ക്ലിയർ ആണ്. ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ.
Okay, should I repeat something?
അല്ല കുഴപ്പമില്ല, ഇപ്പൊ ഓഡിബിൾ ആണ് മാം.
Okay. So I told about what is AI and what is the relevance of NLP. So talking about natural language, it's our language in which we use in our day-to-day life for communication, and we know the programming languages that is called as a formal language. Now, formal language, the syntax is very strict. We have to follow that syntax, but that is not the case with natural language. Even if we are talking a grammatically incorrect sentence, the other person will be able to understand what he's trying to communicate. So in that sense, natural language is a very complicated phenomenon involving recognition of sounds or printed letters. It involves a syntactic parsing and the meaning changes with the intonation, etc. So it is a complicated task. And there is a science goal and engineering goal to NLP. That is, science goal means how it deals with the study of how language is produced or understood. And the engineering goal deals with the computational techniques. We are using the computational techniques to reduce the man-machine gap in natural language. So science goal is usually dealt with the linguist, and the engineering goal is dealt with the computer science people. Okay. So, and in the natural language, understanding means we are converting the linguistic input into its meaning. Natural language understanding of the natural language. And natural language generation means we are generating natural language from the non-linguistic inputs. We have some subparts of it and we need to generate a meaningful sentence or text from it, that is NLG. Now, applications of NLP. First, we'll see classifying text into categories. So, classification of text. So, by that, we mean, suppose we have a newspaper, there will be news about different things. We are categorizing, say, political news and sports news into two. So, that can come under classification of classifying text, or it could be a collection of documents, and we want to classify the documents into different categories. Say, for example, we want to know all the research happening in the prevention or in the cure of COVID-19. So such documents should be collected from others. So that is the classification task of NLP. Then again, in indexing and searching of large text, we are using NLP. Then in translation, by translation, we mean we are converting text from one language to another language. And that is very important in a multilingual country like India. We'll be having all the information, say in English, we want to convert it into our regional languages. Then in speech understanding, NLP has a role. Then in sentiment analysis, by sentiment analysis, we mean what is the polarity of a sentence? For example, whether it is a positive sentence, whether it is a negative sentence or a neutral sentence. It could be applicable in the case of reviews, be it a movie review or a customer satisfaction survey conducted by a company. So what is the general sentiment on behalf of something? That is an area that's called as sentiment analysis. Then in information extraction, that is, we are extracting information from a large collection of text. Then in automatic summarization, by summarization, we mean we need to produce a small summary of one document or from a collection of documents. So summary will be a short description. It should be covering the main topics covered in that particular document or in the collection of document. The important ones, we are forming the summary. Then in the knowledge acquisition task, we are acquiring knowledge and we are producing a representational mechanism which could be used later on. When you need when you need it later, we can use it. So for knowledge acquisition process also NLP is being used. Then in text generation, dialogue generation, then we are all familiar with the chatbots now. All of us might have heard about Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, etc. Now, coming into the language analysis for natural language, see there are different terms coming, or there are different sub-branches in the NLP study. See, the prosody deals with the stress, rhythm, and intonation of language. We know depending upon the intonation of the language, meaning would be different. Using the same words, depending on the tone of speaking, what you want to communicate may be different. Okay, so that deals with the prosody, how we are stressing, rhythming, etc. Then the phonology that deals with the sounds that are combined to form language. We know phonetics, how the individual phonetics are being combined to form language. It is particularly used in computerized speech recognition and generation process. Then coming to the morphological analysis, we are concerned with the splitting of a sentence into, splitting of a word into the different constituent morphemes. We call the different components as morphemes. See, for example, see the word friendly. Friendly is actually consisting of two separate morphemes, a friend and an ly. Okay. Or coming to dose, it is actually door plus s. So they are called as the different morpheme parts. So more different in the morphological analysis, what we're doing is we'll be splitting a particular word into its component parts. There could be prefixes or suffixes. We are splitting all those parts. Even two different words, etc., can be combined. Now coming to Malayalam, it's a very agglutinative language. So there will be, you can combine many different words together into one. For example, you have a word like Seethayude Amma. It is actually Sita plus Uday plus Amma. There could be different words you're again combining. In the case of English, it is simpler compared to agglutinative languages like Malayalam, this morphological passing. So by morphological analysis, we will be able to understand what is a tense, what is the number part. By tense, we mean whether it is past tense, present tense, or future tense. Then the number, whether it is singular or plural. See, for example, doors, we know it is a plural because it is door plus S. S is added to a particular word to make it plural. Okay, and then the different parts of speech. By parts of speech, we mean whether it is an adjective, noun, verb, etc. Okay, then syntax is dealing with the rules for combining words into legal phrases and sentences, and use of those rules to pass and generate sentences. So for any language, be it a formal language or a natural language, there will be some rules with which we can form meaningful or legal phrases and sentences. So it's a study on that. Then the semantics considers the meaning of words, phrases, and sentences and ways in which the meaning is conveyed in natural language expressions. Then pragmatics is a study of the ways in which language affects the listener. See, for example, you have a question like, do you know him? What is the expected answer? You'll be giving yes or no. So, do you know him? Okay, if you know, you'll be giving yes, then otherwise no. But the same thing, a similar question like, do you know what time it is? You don't expect an answer like yes or no. You expect the time as a reply. So that is a pragmatics. Depending on the context and how we are using it, there will be a difference in the effect it produces on the listener. That is what is called as a pragmatics. Then the world knowledge, that includes knowledge of the physical world. Like in addition to a particular sentence you're hearing, you know a lot of things. Human know a lot of things. So even if with one sentence you're able to understand a lot of things from it. That is because of the world knowledge. Now to make a machine understand all those things, machine also should have a world knowledge. Only then it will be able to a background knowledge of whichever area it is considering, only then it will be able to process. Okay. Then coming on to the building blocks of NLP. Building blocks means for any NLP application, you will be using all these steps. Mostly all the steps, or depending upon the application, some of the steps. Okay, we'll see what is tokenization. By tokenization, we mean we are dividing a sentence into different words or different tokens. Okay, by token, it could be simple words. Again, it could be separated by, say, space or full stop or semicolon. It could be anything. That depends on the application. Then stemming means you are actually cutting the inflections and obtaining the root form of the word. See, for example, laughing, by laughing, you're cutting the last affix part and you're converting it as laugh. That is a root form. Dose, you're changing to door. That process is called stemming. So here you're obtaining the root form of the word by cutting the inflections. Inflections could be either at the beginning or at the end. It could be affixes or suffixes. Okay, in some languages it could come in between also. Like Seedede Amma. Today came in between. That is an affix. Okay, so that depends on the language. So the problem is by stemming, you may not be able to obtain the root form of the word in all cases. See, for example, going, gone, and went are different forms of go. So the root form of all these things should be go. By cutting any affix, you will not be able to. By cutting affixes alone, you'll not be able to go because went and go doesn't have any relation. So that process is called as lemmatization. It's a morphological analysis of words to obtain the root word. So stemming may not always work. Lemmatization will be helpful in that process. Stemming is an easy way. You're just cutting the inflections and trying to get the root. Okay, then you have a very important thing, that is parts of speech tagging. we just mentioned what are the different parts of speech. The common parts of speech is noun, verb, pronoun, preposition, adverb, conjunction, particle, article, etc. So we are assigning a POS tag to each of the word we are encountering. And here, one particular word will not be having a single tag. See in this example, answer. The word answer could be a noun or it could be a verb, depending on the context in which it is being used. See, give me your answer. In the case of give me your answer, answer is noun. In the case of answer the question, answer will be a verb. So POS tagging helps in finding out which is the tag associated with a particular word in that particular sentence. You cannot store it earlier. Maybe you can store it like answer can have, or answer could be a noun, it could be a verb, like that only you can store in the store earlier, or you can have a database of such things. Otherwise, when you're given a sentence only, you can break it into different tags. That part is called as the parts of speech tagging. Okay, now here, see for example, I've given a Pentree Bank data set. In that Pentree Bank data set, these are the tags you can see. See, there are different tag sets and the number will be different. Here is a simple one, only 36 tags are being shown. And see the result of this tagging of this particular sentence. The dog killed the bat. The is found to be a determiner. Dog is found to be a noun. Killed is a verb in a past tense. The is again a determiner. Bat is a noun. So this process is called as the post tagging, POS tagging process. Okay. Then you have named entity recognition. It means from a sentence, you're trying to identify entities like a person name, a location, date, quantities, or any other relevant entities. That process is called as name entity recognition. Then coming on to chunking, it means you're picking up individual sentences of information and you're grouping them into bigger pieces. See, for example, we have the sentence, we caught the pink panther. Here you have the different tags. We as a personal pronoun. Then this is again a verb, past tense a verb. Determiner, pink is an adjective, panther is a noun. Here, the pink panther will be grouped together. Okay, though individually all the words have different tags, it is actually meaning one noun phrase, the pink panther. Okay, so that part is called as chunking. Actually, pink is an adjective to panther and the comes before that. So that can be grouped into one, that is called as that is our noun phrase. And we again as another noun phrase, and there is a verb in between. Okay, then word sense disambiguation. It means you're giving meaning or sense to a particular word based on the context. See, here the first 4 sentences. Does Maharani have vegetarian dishes? Do they have vegetarian food at Maharani? Are vegetarian dishes served at Maharani? Does Maharani serve vegetarian fare? All these are having the same meaning. Okay, so the same thing you are able to represent using different sentences. Okay, and all of this should be having the same representation form, that is called as a canonical form of representation in our database. So when it means the same thing, it should have a same representation. And then only you can use it later on. Okay, and again another see, there are different ways in which there can be disambiguity or ambiguity in sentences. I'm just taking 2 examples here. See, I went to the bank. Here we don't know what is bank, whether it is a financial bank or a river bank. We can't make it clear just by the sentence, I went to the bank. Then how do you make the sense clear? For that, you'll have to take the context in which that particular sentence is being written or spoken. Whether something would have been told before the sentence or something will be coming after that. Only then you can resolve the context of this particular sentence. So ambiguity can come in different ways. The same meaning could be expressed in different ways, or the same word could have different meanings. So it's a very big topic. This word sense disambiguation itself is a very large area. Okay, then coming to the stages of language analysis. So suppose we are having a sentence. We have mainly 3 stages. We'll be talking about that. So first step is parsing. So parsing analyzes the syntactic structure of sentences. You know, there could be dependency parsing or constituency parsing. In dependency parsing, you're identifying the relationship between words in a sentence. And in constituency parsing, you're finding the grammatical analysis and it builds a parse tree. Now, you're familiar with top-down parsing and bottom-up parsing. When you're generating a parse tree, it is the same parse tree which you've learned earlier in POC and compiler design, etc. It's the same thing, parse tree. So you have top-down parsing. By top-down parsing, you mean we are starting from the root, then you're progressing downwards the tree and you're generating the leaf node. That is our tokens or the individual lexicons maybe. Then bottom-up parsing means you're starting from the leaf and you go up till you come to the root. See, when generating that tree, you need context-free grammars, okay, or rules. See, just I've written some rules here for this particular example. The man likes the dog. To parse this particular sentence, you need this much set of rules. I'll say the meaning of this sentence giving noun phrase followed by a verb phrase, noun phrase giving a noun phrase giving an article followed by a noun, or word phrase could be a verb phrase could be a verb followed by a noun phrase, article. Here you're talking about some lexicons or the terminal nodes, article giving a, article giving noun giving man, noun could be giving dog, verb giving likes, verb giving bites, etc. So here the normal rule of context-free grammar is applicable. Left side of any grammar will be a non-terminal node. Only non-terminals can have productions. And the right side could be terminals or non-terminals. Non-terminals cannot have any productions. So here, you know, A, the man, dog, likes, bites, etc. would be terminals. And these part would be the non-terminals. Okay, another example. See, from the exam point of view, this generating parse tree from context-free grammar may be important. So I'm taking 2 examples here. See, here another context-free grammar is given. And using this grammar, you're trying to generate parse tree for the phrase. Here you can see 3 different parse trees generated. So you could have more than one parse tree for a particular phrase itself. That indicates again an ambiguity. You can have more than one parse tree generated from this particular context-free grammar given. Again, that should be resolved at another step. And now here, you need some extra things also to generate these leaves. What is actually happening is, you're storing these rules and then you will be having an attached list of these lexicons. Like A can have, A could be an article or noun. Similarly, wilted could be verb or noun. So such information is also stored together with this context-free grammar or the rules. Only then you can produce these tree. Okay, these links show the number. Hope this is clear to you. Okay, I'll just say S giving NPVP. So that is shown as S giving NPVP. Then NP giving article and N, that is rule 8, NP giving article and N. Then article giving A, because we already have a list what A could be. Then noun, it could be a flower. Verb, it could be built. So such a list is also there. Okay, so in exams, maybe you'll be given this full list also. Like in the previous example, you'll be given article giving a noun giving flower or giving wilted, etc. Or if it's not given, you could assume it in progress also. Okay. Then coming to the next step, that is semantic interpretation. So we have first covered with the syntax. Then comes the semantic interpretation. So in semantic interpretation, will be producing a representation of the meaning of the text. We can represent the meaning as conceptual graph. We are already learned conceptual graph, conceptual dependencies, frames, etc. in the previous modules. So you can represent text in these forms. Then using the knowledge of the meaning of the words and the linguistic structure, such as the case roles of nouns or transitive verbs, etc., to find again the meaning, whether such an representation form is okay, depending upon the nouns. How it can be combined, depending upon the language. There will be some rules. Okay, then we have knowledge representation structures. That is how we are adding knowledge or how we are storing the knowledge in some form so that it can be used at a later stage. See, these three parts would be clear with one example. Here we are considering one example. Tarzan kissed Jane. Okay. The first step is passing. In the passing step, we are identifying or we are generating the tree out of the sentence. We are generating the parse tree. That is, a sentence is composed of noun phrase and a verb phrase. Then a verb phrase could be of this, again, it could be a noun verb and noun phrase again could be noun, etc. Noun phrase could be noun, task, and etc. So that it can progress. So this is our parse tree generating. Then coming on to the semantic interpretation of that. Here, something extra from the semantic interpretation. We have just told the statement, Tarzan kissed Jane. But the semantic interpretation of that adds something more to it. Like it's identifying who is the agent, who is the object, what is the instrument used for that. In that way, it is interpreting. So that interpretation, see here, for example, you see Tarzan is the agent. Tarzan is identified as a person. Jane is also identified as a person. That is the object. Because agent is acting on object. Then for the action, you need some instrument. Okay. And that instrument is identified as lips. Nowhere in the sentence that particular idea of lips is given here. But you're adding that because we already know something about kiss. Okay, that is how we are adding to the instrument. Okay, then again, using the knowledge or the world knowledge interpretation, we are giving more meaning to it. See, there are some more things extra coming in, or you're adding this particular sentence also to the knowledge interpretation. Knowledge representation structure you're already having. Because you already know something like, see, for example, Tarzan possesses a pet cheetah. Tarzan loves Jane. Tarzan kisses Jane. That instrument that is again added over here, and both of them are location is represented as jungle. Okay, so when you're getting a sentence or when you're adding a sentence to our knowledge, you should finally get a representation structure like this, and this representation structure can be used for question answering. We'll remember this particular structure. We'll be seeing this question answering session at the end. One example we can see where we are asking a question on this particular representation and you can easily obtain the result. So these are the three different parts: parsing, semantic interpretation, and knowledge representation. Okay, then coming to the stochastic tools for language analysis. By stochastic, we mean we are using the statistical techniques and there will be a random process associated with it. So your natural language is also taken as a random process. And by using statistical techniques, we are actually able to model those parts which are well defined and those parts which have some degree of randomness also. Okay, now we'll see one example. We are taking the case of a tagger. We'll see how a stochastic tagger is working. Tagger means parts of speech tagger. Okay, so parts of speech tagger should resolve ambiguities by using a training corpus. By corpus, we mean a collection of text. Okay, so that collection of text which we are using to train a tagger program, you're calling by the name training corpus. Okay, so stochastic tagger is resolving the ambiguities from the using this training corpus. It calculates the probability of a given word having a given tag in a particular context. So it totally depends on which corpus you're using. And from the corpus, you're actually calculating the probability for each of these words. See, coming to this example, you have a sentence SW. It's actually having a collection of words W1, W2, etc. to WN. And you have a set of tags for that sentence, T1, T2, etc. to Tn. This n words and n tags is actually a sequence of n random variables. It could be anything. Okay, from our collection of words and collection of tags, it could be any sequence. So that is actually a random variable. And here, value of ti at location I, we are denoting as the small t suffix I. Value of a particular tag at location I, that is ith tag of ith word. Okay, we are referring to as t suffix I. Similarly, word at location I, you are referring by this name, by this wi. Okay, here we'll be encountering conditional probability statements like this. Probability of x by y, meaning it stands for the probability of x given that y has already occurred. So we know, we are sure about y, then what is the probability of x to occur? Okay, then we are calculating, we usually calculate probability from a corpus like this. See, for example, the ith tag should be a verb. Given I minus 1th tag was a noun. Okay, that is represented as P of Ti equal to V given T of I minus 1 equal to N. And that is calculated as count of nouns at position I minus 1 and V at I. So this thing, two things are coming together. I minus 1th position was N and ith position is V. What is the count of such occurrences divided by count of n at position I minus 1. So that is our probability of Ti equal to V by T of I minus 1 equal to N. Okay. Now we find the sequence of values for tags, which is most likely. We want to find out, now suppose we have a sequence of sentences, sequence of words in a sentence, W1 to Wn. We want to find that tags for it. We want to find which is the most appropriate tag set, T1, T2, etc. up to Tn. So that is a maximization problem. We want to maximize the probability of P of T1 to Tn given W1 to Wn. Okay, we know Bayes rule. It's probability of A by B equal to probability of A into probability of B by A divided by probability of B. So we are representing what we know, or in our context it is probability of T1 to Tn given W1 to Wn. That can be written in this way. Just A is taken as the T1 to Tn part and B is taken as the W1 to Wn part. And denominator I've omitted because it's actually the probability of W1, W2, etc. to Wn. Actually, that is the probability of the sentence, and that will be fixed. So we need to bother about this numerator part only. Okay, this is direct application of Bayes rule. We can write probability of T1 to Tn given W1 to Wn straight like this. Okay, then individually, the first part of P1, P of T1 to Tn can be broken down into what do you mean by this actually? Probability for tag sequence to be T1, T2, etc. up to Tn. It means first tag should be T1, second tag should be T2, third should be T3, like the 10th tag should be Tn. So we can break it down as probability of T1 into probability of T2 given T1 into probability of T3 given T2 T1 etc. up to probability of Tn given Tn minus 1 etc. up to T1. Okay, so similarly, the second part, probability of W1 to Wn given T1 to Tn can be split like this. It will be probability of W1 given T1 to Tn into probability of W2. Now we know W1 is also there and the tag sequence is also like this. W1, it actually means you already know the tag set, then what is the probability for that particular word to come. Okay, you know the tag sequence is T1 to Tn and first word is W1. Then what is the probability for the second word to be W2? That is the meaning of that particular term. Okay. So we are getting into again W3 term. So the last term will be probability of Wn n divided by or probability of Wn given. It's not divided by probability of Wn given Wn minus 1 etc. up to W1. So we know n minus 1 terms and the full tag set also. In that case, what is the probability for the nth word to be this particular Wn which we are considering? Okay, so that is how we are calculating the tag. We are finding out the most appropriate tag sequence for a particular sentence. Okay, you are substituting the 2 and 3 in 1, get a full equation. We are finding out which is a maximum or probable tag sequence. Okay, now this statistical method has some restrictions or it has some difficulties. Like it becomes very complex to maximize equations with probabilities conditioned on many other random variables. As the sentence length increases, the number of conditional variables is also increasing. So the number of different cases you need to consider will be growing exponentially. So it's actually difficult to calculate all those probability values. It will be taking very long also. And another problem is depending on our corpus, as a sentence length increases, we may be able to, we may find it difficult to calculate the probability also. See, for example, finding probability of cat given the may be easier compared to calculating probability of cat given the dog chased the. Like we are considering a sentence, the dog chased the cat, and we are finding out what will be the probability of the last word to be cat. Okay, we can calculate this probability from the corpus only if there are many occurrences, only then it will be accurate. Okay, the corpus we are considering should be a real world representation. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Okay, just from a short sentence, we are saying probability of this thing is probability of cat bite, the dog chase is 1. It doesn't make sense when you're coming to real world applications. So the corpus you're taking should be having almost the different combinations which are commonly being used. So there is a difficulty when a particular event is occurring only a few times in the training set. Then accuracy may not be very good. Okay, hope you are clear with this example. The occurrence of the cat may come more number of times in our corpus than the full sentence to be repeated. The dog chased the cat. Okay, there may be one or two, but not many. Whereas if you're talking about if it is a story about a cat and dog, the cat, that particular phrase may be occurring many number of times. Okay, whereas this full sentence, the dog chased the cat, may be occurring only once or twice. So there is a problem in calculating the estimate. Okay, so there is another approach, a Markov model approach. Here, our Markov assumption is that the present thing under consideration is independent of things in the far past. We are considering only a few terms which were coming just before that. See, for example, in a bigram model, we are saying a particular word would be depending only on one previous word. In trigram, we'll be considering only 2 previous words, like that. Okay, so in considering the bigram model, see this is our previous equation, T1, T of T1 to Tn, we had this equation that is written as pi of T of Ti given Ti minus 1. So all these part we are considering, at every step we are considering only the previous step. So what is the probability of I tag to be Ti given I minus 1, the tag is Ti minus 1. We are considering only that. We are totally forgetting about that. That is, we are considering, when we are finding out P of T3, we are considering only T2. What was T2? It is after T2, what is the probability of T3 to come? When we are considering probability of T4 by, when we are considering probability of T4, we consider only probability of T4 given T3. That is a bigram model. In the case of trigram model, we'll be considering 2 previous words. Okay, so thereby that full length of sentence can be reduced. The same thing is applicable to equation 3 also. We are removing that full context, P of W1 to Wn given T1 to Tn. We are reducing it to pi of, so P of Wi given Ti. We are considering only one previous term. And here, this first term that is called as a transition probability. It means what is the probability for transition from tag 1 to tag 2, then from tag 2 to tag 3, like that. And emission probability means what is that? That is actually something about the Markov assumption. What is the probability for Ti, that is a particular tag Ti to emit a particular word Wi. Okay, so here our previous example of T1 to Tn, we are finding the tag set T1 to Tn given the word sequence can be simplified to these 2 terms. So that is our Markov assumption. It's clear. Now you have Viterbi algorithm to calculate. You have a dynamic programming algorithm called as Viterbi algorithm, which, using which you can easily calculate this particular tag sequence. Okay. Then again, progressing further, we are finding that Markov approach is also not that we need additional information than just tag set. Okay, Markov approach is considering only the local context. Now, if you want some more information, like we want to identify what is the agent, what is the object, and decide whether verbs are active or passive, etc., or richer context is required. See, consider the sentence. The policy announced in December by the president guarantees lower taxes. Okay. Policy here by the Markov model. Actually, in this particular sentence, president is the agent, but the Markov model is likely to identify policy as an agent and announced as an active verb. Okay. So here you can identify an agent better if you're able to ask questions like this. Is a current noun inanimate? Or does the word by appear a few words before the noun under consideration? Like that, if you're able to ask some questions like this, you may be able to identify, or you may be able to answer which is an agent, object, etc. That is our decision tree. You know what is decision tree? There will be different branches. We'll be having questions, or you follow a branch only if that particular question on that node matches. Okay, so we are combining the Markov approach with the parsing techniques to answer or to identify which are the agents or which are the objects, etc. Again, you know, one example for a decision tree, ID3 algorithm is there. ID3 algorithm, actually we haven't learned these things in AI. Maybe you're learning it in data mining. Some of you might have learned in machine learning. You know, we are not going into these details now. ID3 algorithm was invented by Rose Quinlan. It's used to generate a decision tree from a data set. So the Markov, what we are getting as a result of the Markov approach or the statistical analysis that is a tagged. It's combined with the decision tree to identify voters, agent or object, etc. Okay. Now, to answer questions like is a current noun inanimate, we should know which of the words are animate and which of the words are inanimate. So there should be a clustering of words there. See, for example, you have sentences like you have words like cat, kitten, run, green, eats, meows, etc. And here there is some relationship between cat and kitten, and that is clustered into one unit, or that is grouped into one unit, so that they could be used mutually in place of one another. See, for example, P of eats, probability of eats given cat is about the same as probability of eats given kitten. It means probability for eats to follow cat is the same as probability of eats to follow the word kitten, or probability of meows to follow cat is the same as probability of meows to follow kitten. So that way clustering of terms is necessary to answer which are the inanimate terms or which are the animate terms in a particular example. So all these depends on which is the application you need. All these things may not be relevant in one particular application. Okay, then we'll see how this parsing also can be modified using this stochastic tools. See, we know when there is a problem of ambiguity, that is what you mean by you are having a random process and you're identifying you have stochastic methods of solving it. So here again, ambiguity of words to have different tags is resolved using this probabilistic context-free grammar. We'll see that. See, give me a book and book me a flight ticket. In the case of give me a book is a noun. And in the case of book me a flight ticket, book is actually an action verb. So here, book is having two different sense, two different ways in which book is being used. So how do you resolve? When we are coming to the tagging process, how do you resolve it? Okay, for that, you have something called as probabilistic context-free grammar. And for that, you're attaching a probability value to every context-free grammar. That again is just an estimate from the number of times each rule is used in a corpus containing a past sentence. Consider the grammar rules. C giving R1, C giving R2, etc. up to C giving RM, where C is a category or tag and RIs are the different rules. Here probability of RJ given C is equal to the count of number of times RJ is being used by number of times RI is used. So RJ, that is, we are actually finding out you know the category and you have this particular rule. In the particular rule, how many times RJ is being used as that particular category. See, coming to this example, see you have a set of rules. Here S giving NP-VP, totally the left hand side. S is coming, that is starting of a sentence is coming 300 times in the corpus. Okay, and every time S occurred, it followed the same rule only. There is only one rule for us, that is S giving NP-VP. So the count for the rule is also 300, and probability value for that value is 1. Okay, then if you have a sentence like VP giving V, VP is occurring in 300 times. It's coming as 300 times in the left hand side in the rule set. Then out of that, VP giving V came 116 times, VNP came 118 times, VNPPP came 66 times. Like that. Okay, like that you are calculating the probability values. Okay, so that is how we are in probabilistic context-free grammar, there is a probability value also attached to this particular thing. So here, what is the advantage of this? When you need to resolve between NP giving NN or NP giving N, you look into the probability value. Okay, whichever is more probable will give that particular assignment. Okay, in case we know this 0.14 NP giving N is coming more number of times than NP giving NN, so it's more probable to have this particular substitution this time also. So we'll go for that. So that is what basically you're using in probabilistic context-free grammar. Okay, now coming back to some applications, we already saw some applications in the beginning. According to a prescribed textbook, it explains little more on these applications also. That's why I'm taking it again. Okay, so story, understanding, and question answer. You have a story. We'll consider the same story of Tarzan, and from this, we need to answer a question. Okay, so you're asking the program who loves Jane. Now, the answer to this will be obtained from the representation, whatever representation, the final representation form we had. Now, there are specific meanings to this interrogating words, like who is questioning, who is the agent of the action, what is asking for the object of the action, how is asking for the action performed, etc. So that way your program will interpret the question, and we need to find or we need to give back the answer to whatever is the question asked. See, so for this particular question, it converts a question into this form. Okay, who loves Jane is converted into this particular conceptual graph representation. Okay, you know, person is Jane, and this Jane is an object, and we know we should identify who is the person. Okay, our question is who loves Jane, isn't it? Who is loving Jane? Okay, so here the answer to this question, the answer part will be given as a question mark. Actually, we need to identify what is the question mark. Okay, now recollect the figure which I told you to remember. There you had a same box. There the person was written as Tarzan. Okay, so now you know the answer as Tarzan. Now another application, it's database front-end. NLP being used as a database front-end. So in database front-end, you are given a question like who hired John Smith. This particular question should be converted into a form, into a query called select manager from manager of hire where employee equal to John Smith. Once you have this particular query, you can question a database and you can directly get the answer. So the conversion part, who hired John Smith, to this particular query, that is wherever NLP plays a role. Okay, then another application is the summarization system. Summarization could be, you have a lot of applications in or World Wide Web. From there, you have to collect relevant terms or summarize some terms. Like as I said before, we have to collect all documents referring to COVID-19 here, maybe that, or from like from a newspaper, you're collecting you're interested only in sports news. So from news, we are collecting the sports news and more. So that is another application for the summarization system that is also mentioned here. Then to generalize or to extract information using learning algorithms. Here, to extract means you are having, see, from the text you already have, you have machine learning algorithms to create models. Then using the model, From the given task, we are extracting information. Okay, it could be generalized by machine learning algorithms. See, from suppose you are filling out a form. Okay, you need to collect appropriate terms, and you're filling up those locations or those slots. So completed or even partially filled text summarization templates are collected from appropriate websites, and the resulting template information is then stored in a relational database, where the learning algorithms such as ID3 or C4.5, these are decision tree variations, are used to extract decision trees, which can reflect rule relationships implicit in the data sets. That's actually called as a data mining part. In data mining part also, NLP is being used, especially when you're coming to text mining part. Okay, so these are the references which I have used in creating those slides. This is your first textbook, the Luger textbook, and then two NLP textbooks, Ralph C. Martin and James Allen. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have some queries.
Okay.
First one, can you explain the rules defined for the grammar with the help of another example?
Pardon?
One question from Saurav. Can you explain the rules defined for the grammar with the help of another example?
Okay, rules for a particular grammar means that depends on the context. Like in English, you have certain rules. Okay, that is, I'll just go back to an example. Okay, these rules are language specific. Okay. A sentence giving noun phrase and verb phrase. I'm coming to an English sentence. All the sentences we have a noun phrase followed by a verb phrase. There could be other forms also. I'm just taking one example. A sentence could be noun phrase followed by a verb phrase. And in noun phrase, it could be followed by a noun. This set of rules is actually our rules given by our linguist. Okay, that is language specific. Okay. Whether English would be having a set of rules. Coming to Malayalam, it would be something different. Okay. Talking about English and Malayalam itself, the order is different. The subject position, object position is different in English and Malayalam. So that way it will be different. Okay.
Okay, one more question from Saurav. What do you mean by nouns is animate and inanimate terms?
Okay. Animate and inanimate means whether it is an animal or not an animal. Okay. We are answering that particular question like question. Okay, we talked about in this exam, isn't it? Okay. See, the policy announced in December by the president guarantees lower taxes. Here, policy is not the actual agent. This policy was announced by someone. That someone is our agent here. Okay. So that should be an animate entity, right? President. Okay. That is what you mean by animate and inanimate, or living being and non-living object. So that way you can interpret. I just refer to that as inanimate or inanimate because agent maybe mostly in these examples it will be it is more likely to be a president than policy. That way only we can answer these questions to identify what is an agent, what is an object, etc. We don't have hard and fast rules here. We are trying to add more and more number of cases. We are trying to refine the rules. That way only the accuracy can be improved in any NLP task. Should have a large corpus for this, large set of sets, even you can learn.
Okay, ma'am. One question from Blessy. What is a corpus?
Okay, I'm sorry. It was a good question. Corpus is just means a collection of large text. Corpus just means a collection of large text from which we are learning. Okay. See,
Okay, ma'am.
we are calculating the probability and all. So how do you calculate the probability? We need something from which we can learn. So that for that we are taking some sample text. That sample text collection is called as corpus.
Okay, ma'am. Example for trigram model. One question.
Okay, trigram just means when you are considering, say, the fourth word, you are considering the probability for the tag of a fourth word. You are considering the previous three words. It's not only coming in tagging. It's bigram, trigram. It's coming in different areas. Trigram just means you're considering the previous two terms. Unigram means you're considering one word as standalone entity. It's not affected by anything coming before that. Bigram means it is affected by the previous term. Trigram means it's affected by the previous two terms, like that. N-gram means it will be nth term is affected by the previous n minus one terms. That's the meaning.
Okay, ma'am. One last question. What is the significance of stochastic tools?
Okay, stochastic tools just means statistical tools. They are not the only way in which you can go for the examples I mentioned. I talked about one example of tagging. Tagging itself, there are different ways. The statistical method is only one way of learning. I am using this, or I'm discussing stochastic tools because it is specifically mentioned in your syllabus. Stochastic just means statistical measure. That is specifically mentioned in your syllabus. That's why I took